Lumayo Ka Nga sa Akin is written by Bob Ong and Eric Cabahug. It's based on the book of the same title by Bob Ong, who is, by the way, not one person. He's apparently like a collective of people under that one pseudonym. But anyway, this is a movie that sets out to parody 3 different popular genres in local cinema. So this movie is separated into 3 segments. The first segment parodizes the Filipino action movie. The second one kind of satirizes the Filipino horror movie. And the third one talks about the Filipino rom-com. And this is, by the way, my very first review for 2016. Well, my first review for a movie released in 2016. And I'm very happy that it is a Filipino movie. And I was looking forward to this movie in particular because I read the book and I enjoyed it. I found it funny for what it was. And I actually thought that the Aba Nakakabasa Na Pala Ako adaptation like a couple of years ago was actually pretty decent. So it was with a heavy heart that I say that I just didn't really like Lumayo Ka Nga sa Akin at all. I don't think it's a very good movie at all. It's just full of technical issues, lots of annoying acting, and just, I think, the wrong understanding of what satire is. So the first segment in this movie is entitled Bala sa Bala, Kamao sa Kamao, Satsat sa Satsat, which is obviously the action parody in this movie. And this is directed by Mark Mailey and stars Benji Paras and Candy Pangilinan. And honestly, this segment was the worst of the lot. It's just, you know, from the very first scene, you could tell that there's just something really wrong about it. I mean, not necessarily in terms of narrative and stuff, but just in terms of the way it's made. I noticed that there's something very wrong about the sound mixing. It's like either people's voices were very shrill, or, you know, they were just drowned out by the music that plays continuously throughout the entire movie, which gets really, really annoying. And I'm not usually a big cinematography guy. I don't really comment that much on film's visuals in a technical way. But you could just tell that there was a lot of just ugly framing in this movie, and, you know, just people's foreheads getting chopped off and stuff, and it was very, very distracting, because one of the things cinematography should do, at least sometimes, is to draw the viewer's eye towards certain important details. And here it just felt more like misdirection. It felt like a distraction. But all this inconsistent audio and video wasn't just present in this first segment, but in the other 2 segments as well, which I'll talk about later. And this segment as well in particular had a lot of really jarring cuts to different characters and different scenes, and none of them really just felt tied together. You know, it just felt like a bunch of scenes just kind of thrown into the movie, and there just wasn't any cohesiveness between them. And my biggest issue with this segment, which is also an issue I have with the other 2, is that it doesn't really satirize like the action genre itself. It focuses more on the romantic elements of the action movie instead of, you know, the action itself. In fact, there is pretty much no action in this segment, which is kind of baffling. And Mark Mailey doesn't even attempt to go anywhere near the smoky, maangas classic action vibe, which I feel like would have been a lot easier to satirize instead of like the romantic elements. Benji Paras and Candy Pangilinan don't really have anything to do. They're all comedy in this movie. They also don't really get to contribute to any action. And what this segment gets really wrong, in my opinion, is that, like I said, it doesn't feel like a satire of action. It just feels like a comedy with lots of references to action movies. The next segment is entitled Shake, Shake or Shakest, which is obviously the parody for the Filipino horror movie. This one is directed by Andoy Ranay and stars Herbert Bautista, Shai Carlos, and Maricel Soriano. And to be honest, like, each of these segments in this movie gets slightly better and better. So this one isn't terrible like the first one, but it's still pretty bad. There are a couple of decent, well-lit shots here and there, and some pretty good makeup effects that I think they should have utilized a lot more. But again, there's just the same audio problems in this segment, and pretty much everything else about this part is just as bad as the last one. You know, they focus on all these unfunny jokes that stretch on for just way too long. I mean, they weren't even funny to begin with, but the fact that they stay with these jokes for like 2 to 3 minutes or something. While the first segment was just kind of boring overall, this segment is just, it's a lot more painful to watch, in my opinion. To be fair, this segment does focus a bit more on actually satirizing the horror genre, but it just beats us over the head with meta humor, and I'll get into that later, but, you know, they just don't handle it well. And I just could not take Maricel Soriano's screeching. It's just like, she legitimately made my head hurt while I was in the cinema. I couldn't stand it. And no one else in the movie really does a good job. I mean, Shai Carlos is just kind of there, Herbert Bautista is just kind of there. And one of my bigger issues with this segment is that, you know, I just hate it when parodies feel like they have to be just pure comedies. You know, they don't take into account the other elements of, you know, the genres they're trying to poke fun at, and in effect, kind of make these parodies sort of like tributes as well to the good stuff about these genres. And I hate to make the comparison again, but if you look at movies like Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, and The World's End, those movies are effectively parodies of the genres that they are poking fun at, but they're also good movies as a whole, and this movie just is not a good movie. The last segment in the movie is entitled Asawa ni Maria. It's directed by Chris Martinez and stars Antoinette Tos, Paolo Ballesteros, Jason Gainza, and Christine Reyes. And this is definitely the best of the lot. Just, visually speaking, this segment has the best locations, the best makeup, the best kind of wildly shifting production design, which really isn't saying much, but it was just entertaining to see them move, like, almost intentionally, illogically, from a hacienda-like farm to an underwater setting to like a sort of corporate setting with like no explanation. But again, there are still a lot of things wrong with this segment in particular. The music is still overbearing. It's still really bumpy editing-wise. Like, a lot of scenes just feel like they stop and start inconsistently. And once again, this segment just attempts to satirize way too many things at the same time, just kind of ends up overdoing it again with the meta humor, and just keeps calling attention to itself, like, this is a movie, and you end up getting distracted, and you really, it just stops being funny because the focus is drawn away from, parodying the rom-com and turning it into just like a parody of lots of other things. What I will say about Asawa ni Marie though is that Christine Reyes and Joey Perez are extremely committed and extremely impressive in this movie. They are loud as well in this segment without being painful. What I really like is that they do certain physical things here, like physical comedy that I was not expecting from them, and I really gotta give them props for that. And Chris Martinez does nail a couple moments that really kind of capture the absurdity of the Filipino rom-com. So in a way, this segment really does get closest to what this whole movie is trying to go for. In the end though, I still think that Lumayo Ka Nga sa Akin is still a pretty bad movie. I just can't find it in myself to recommend it, even with the strengths of the last segment. I think you should avoid it. Even if you're a fan of the book, I think you're just gonna be disappointed. Right, so those are my thoughts on Lumayo Ka Nga sa Akin. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.